There was a time when you felt God, the tears came easily, worship stirred something deep. You would sit in your room, heart wide open, sure of his presence. But now, it's different. There's a distance, a silence, and maybe you're wondering, did God leave me? But what if he didn't leave? What if he's leading? You see, there comes a moment in every soul's journey where God weans us off emotional dependency and draws us into something far more sacred, intimacy that doesn't rely on feeling. Because real love, like real faith, is not built on highs. It's built on honor. It's forged in the fire of commitment, not in the thrill of passion. Philosophers and theologians have long wrestled with the idea that love is more than an emotional state. It is a fundamental organizing principle of the human experience. It's not fleeting desire. It's not momentary ecstasy. Love is the choice to remain, to show up, to stay when you no longer feel compelled by emotion, but bound by devotion. This is what many miss. The psychological journey of love mirrors the spiritual one. In the beginning, everything is new. Exciting, emotional, but then comes the test. Will you continue when the feelings no longer carry you? When you don't feel in love with God, will you still act in love toward him? Love in its truest form, whether with God or another human being, is the collision of vulnerability and responsibility. It is the courage to let someone see you fully, and the strength to remain fully present when you see them clearly. It asks everything of you, and it gives back more than you ever imagined, but not always in ways you expect. This is why reducing love to pleasure alone is so dangerous. A hedonistic love is self-centered. It says, I stay as long as this serves me. But a holy love is sacrificial. It says, I stay because I said I would. We live in a culture obsessed with feeling. We chase emotional highs, relational butterflies, spiritual ecstasy. But the Spirit of God often moves in whispers, not waves. He draws you deeper when you no longer feel close because he's teaching you to become close. And how does he do it? By integrating truth into your love, discipline into your affection, growth into your intimacy. The tension we all face is real. We long for unconditional love, yet we struggle to offer it in the face of imperfection. We want to be fully accepted, yet recoil when someone else's brokenness becomes too much. But the love of God, and the love that reflects him, doesn't run from flaws. It embraces the shared burden of being human. To love someone not despite their flaws, but because of them, is divine. Because in their flaws you recognize your own, in their pain you see your past, and in your mutual weakness God builds a connection that isn't based on convenience, but on covenant. That's where spiritual closeness with God is rediscovered, not in the rush, but in the rootedness. When you stop chasing emotional fireworks and start embracing the quiet discipline of presence. When your worship stops being loud and starts being true. So if you don't feel close to God right now, don't panic. Don't chase a feeling. Chase faithfulness, because intimacy with God isn't sustained by emotion. It's sustained by love. And love in its truest form is not what you feel, it's what you choose. There's something deeply sacred about love that stays. Not love that's loud, not love that's poetic, but love that whispers, I'm not going anywhere, even when everything inside you wants to run. See, we've been taught that love is supposed to feel good, that love is supposed to complete us, elevate us, excite us. And yes, at times it does. But if that's all you believe love to be, then when it gets hard, when the fire cools, when the person you once adored now irritates and wounds you, you'll wonder if it was ever love to begin with. But let me tell you something that our culture refuses to say. Real love is often most real when it hurts. Philosophically, love is not a chemical rush. It is a moral act, a voluntary alignment of the will with the good of another. It's not rooted in what we feel, but in what we choose. And that's where its beauty lies, because anything that requires no sacrifice is too cheap to be holy. Psychologically, love is the crucible of our becoming. When you choose to love, truly love, you are choosing to let someone else affect you at the deepest level. You open the door to disappointment, betrayal, pain, and yet you keep the door open. Why? Because that's the only way transformation happens. This is the paradox. Love makes us most vulnerable, and yet it's the only thing strong enough to hold us together when everything else is falling apart. Love draws out our worst and our best. It shows us our pride, our wounds, our selfishness, but also our capacity for grace, patience, and mercy. And this is why love cannot be reduced to pleasure. Pleasure is about consumption, but love is about contribution. The moment love becomes about what you get instead of what you give, it collapses under the weight of ego. There is a seductive lie in the world that says, if it's not making you happy, walk away. But the Spirit of God whispers something different. Stay and let me change you through this. This is not to say we tolerate abuse or enable harm. No, love has boundaries, love has truth, but it also has resilience. It endures when convenience ends, and that endurance is not weakness, it's worship. Now here's the tension. We all want unconditional love. We crave to be known and still wanted, but are we willing to extend that same love to others? Can we accept the reality that the people we love will fail us, frustrate us, and expose our insecurities? To love someone not despite their flaws, but because of the shared burden of human imperfection, is a divine act. It means seeing their brokenness and saying, "You are still worth showing up for." And in that decision, something holy happens. Because in loving the flawed, you become more like the flawless one. This is where moral development happens. This is where your character deepens. This is where God shapes you, not on the mountaintop of emotion, but in the valleys of misunderstanding, disappointment, and perseverance. So, if you're navigating a relationship where the spark is gone and only the weight remains, don't mistake that weight for the absence of God. Sometimes that is where He is, in the staying, in the wrestling, in the quiet decision to love anyway. Because love, true, holy, soul-refining love isn't supposed to be easy, it's supposed to be eternal. And eternity isn't built in euphoria. It's built in the trenches where two flawed people choose to hold on to a perfect God. There's a quiet kind of love the world doesn't applaud. It doesn't show up in Instagram stories. It doesn't feel like a romantic movie. It doesn't always spark butterflies in your stomach. No, this kind of love is raw, gritty. It's the love that walks into the storm and doesn't flinch. The love that says, "I see your wounds and I'm not leaving." It's easy to mistake love for a feeling, for a rush of emotion, but the truth is, emotion is cheap. You can feel something and still walk away. But when you choose to stay, when you choose to keep showing up even after the thrill has left, that's when love stops being an idea and starts becoming a foundation. You see, love isn't about running to someone when it's easy. It's about refusing to run from them when it's hard. Philosophically, love must be understood not as an emotion but as a moral decision, a discipline of the soul. When we reduce love to romantic highs or physical pleasure, we strip it of its spiritual power. We turn it into a mirror that only reflects what we want to see, not a window that shows us who we could become. Because real love that transforms, love that sanctifies, requires vulnerability, commitment, and sacrifice. Vulnerability is the open door. It says, "Here I am, not who I pretend to be, not the filtered version, just me." But vulnerability without commitment is dangerous. It exposes you to being used, so love demands commitment, a sacred choosing, and that commitment will eventually call for sacrifice. You will have to lay something down. Your pride, your comfort, your need to be right, sometimes even your right to be offended. That's where love reshapes us. not in the excitement of new beginnings, but in the holy friction of staying through conflict. Psychologically, this is where identity is forged, because how we love, especially when it costs us, forms the truest picture of who we are. Love that demands nothing of us leaves us unchanged, but love that challenges us to rise above our impulses. That's the kind of love that builds moral character. But there's a tension here, an emotional tug-of war between unconditional love and realistic boundaries. How do we love someone completely when they're still in process, still imperfect, still failing? This is the heart of divine love. To say, I will not turn my face from you because of your flaws. In fact, I love you through them, with them, even because of them. Not in a codependent way, not in a way that tolerates harm, but in a way that honors the shared burden of being human. When you love someone not despite their brokenness, but because you recognize yourself in it, that's holy ground. That's the love of Christ, and that's what we're called to reflect, because the true measure of love is not how high it lifts you, but how deeply it roots you. Not how fast it moves, but how firmly it stands. Anyone can fall in love, but staying in love, becoming love, that takes courage. That takes surrender. That takes a heart so aligned with truth that even when every emotion says run, your spirit says remain. This is what we were made for, not love that is easy, but love that is eternal. Not love that flatters, but love that forms. Not love that avoids pain, but love that endures it, because that's how God loves you. And that's how, through Him, you are called to love others. We live in a world where almost everything is disposable. Phones, friendships, even people. The moment something becomes inconvenient or uncomfortable, we're taught to walk away, to protect our peace, to choose ourselves. But here's the painful truth: many are not running from toxicity, they're running from responsibility, the kind of responsibility love demands. And maybe that's why love no longer feels sacred. Love, when reduced to emotion, becomes fleeting, but love, when embraced as discipline, becomes eternal. Love, in its truest and most transformative form, is not simply what we feel, it's what we forge. It is courage manifested. It is truth embodied. It is sacrifice chosen, not once, but daily. And in that sense, love is not the easy path, it is the holy path. Philosophically, love organizes our lives by calling us out of self-centeredness and into self-giving. It confronts the ego and requires us to make room for another person's soul, mess, wounds, and all. To love is to enter chaos, not to be consumed by it, but to bring order to it. That's what God does, and that's what love empowered by God does in us. Psychologically, this act of loving, truly loving, is where we become who we are. Identity is not shaped in isolation. It is refined through the friction of deep connection, through every argument that doesn't end in abandonment, through every tear shed in vulnerability, through every quiet choice to stay when leaving would be easier. Because it's in that friction that we discover love isn't here to make us feel better. It's here to make us better. But here lies the danger. Our generation often mistakes pleasure for love. If it excites me, it's love. If it thrills me, it must be right. But pleasure detached from truth becomes poison. When love becomes about what I get, not what I give, it is no longer love. It is lust masquerading as intimacy. It's comfort posing as commitment. Love that lasts is not sensual. It's sacrificial. It lives in truth. It breathes in discipline. It grows in uncomfortable spaces and matures through mutual growth. And yet we yearn for unconditional love. We want to be embraced without having to be perfect. That desire is not wrong. It is divine. But unconditional love does not mean love without boundaries, nor does it mean love without accountability. It means this: I see your brokenness and I still choose to build with you. Not because it's easy, but because love has called me to something holy. To love someone not in denial of their flaws, but in full awareness of them. That is the reflection of Christ. He does not turn away when we fail. He draws closer. He heals, corrects, restores, but he stays. And what does it mean to love because of the shared burden of being? It means we recognize we are all carrying weight. We are all wrestling with imperfections, fears, past wounds. And in that shared humanity, we find compassion, not contempt, grace, not judgment, devotion, not detachment. That's the miracle of true love. It transforms two wounded people into a place of healing for each other. Not because either is perfect, but because both are willing. So if you find yourself standing in the tension between the ideal of love and the reality of struggle, don't walk away too quickly. That tension may be the exact pressure God is using to make you whole. Because love, when it's real, doesn't ask if this is easy. It asks, is this eternal? And the love that endures, the love that stays in truth, sacrifices in discipline, and grows through grace, that love changes everything. When God designed love, He did not design it as a soft pillow, but as a refining fire, not just a comfort, but a crucible. We often want love to feel like a retreat, a sanctuary from the chaos of life. And sometimes it is. But more often, true love is the place where our deepest fears, wounds, and insecurities are drawn to the surface. Not to shame us, but to heal us. Love is not here to pacify you. Love is here to purify you. Psychologically, love shapes us by confronting the parts of us we'd rather hide. You don't truly know yourself until you try to love someone deeply. Because only in the mirror of relationship do your selfish tendencies, control issues, and unhealed traumas emerge. Love doesn't just reveal the other person's flaws, it reveals yours, and that's the point. Philosophically, love is the highest form of human organizing principle because it calls us to transcend ourselves. It insists that life is not about what we can consume, but what we can contribute. It elevates meaning above momentary pleasure. In a world that tells us to chase what feels good, love teaches us to choose what is good even when it hurts. The danger, then, lies in reducing love to a hedonistic pursuit. If we seek love only for the highs, for the fireworks and dopamine rush, we set ourselves up for disillusionment. Because the moment love becomes demanding, the moment it calls us to deny ourselves, we'll label it toxic and walk away. But listen, anything that asks nothing of you will do nothing for you. The highest love calls us to the deepest surrender. It's easy to stand at a wedding altar and promise forever. But the real vow begins in the moments no one sees, in the arguments that test your humility, in the late night tears that test your patience, in the silences that test your faith. Love in these moments becomes the slow and sacred act of dying to self. Vulnerability, commitment, and sacrifice aren't just romantic ideals. They are spiritual disciplines. Vulnerability says, I am not afraid to be seen. Commitment says, I will still choose you when I no longer feel you. Sacrifice says, I will lay down what is easy to carry what is eternal. Now, the tension, how do we hold space for unconditional love in a world of deep imperfection? The answer lies in a holy kind of realism, a love that doesn't ignore flaws, but chooses to engage with them redemptively, not enabling, not excusing, but loving with clarity, to love someone because they are human, because they are imperfect, because they carry the same burden of being. That is divine. It echoes the love of Christ. He did not wait for us to be whole before He called us beloved. He loved us in our chaos and chose to carry it with us. That's not passive affection. That is fierce, holy allegiance. And this kind of love will leave you changed because it requires the death of your ego, the dismantling of your pride, and the surrender of control. But what it builds in return is far greater. It gives you a deeper sense of self, forged in humility, rooted in truth, and sustained by grace. So when love stops feeling like a fairy tale, don't be discouraged. That's not the end of love. It's the beginning of its sanctifying work. Because love is not here to entertain you, it's here to form you. And if you stay long enough, love will make you holy,